All right, so the question of the day is Starfield woke? Is it pushing a political agenda, forcing the new progressive religion down people's throats, and blah 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 blah? First of all, the trans issue, the trans issue, the trans issue is complicated. Okay, I have tried to navigate my way through the thicket that is this issue with people on both sides of this debate saying crazy shit, lots of crazy shit, and blowing everything out of proportion a lot of the time. And it has become, it is one of those things that I think would not really exist the way it does now without the internet. Certainly not without, the news media the way it is. Pronouns are the issue of the Starfield debate. We've had a few different prominent YouTubers. This one heel versus babyface guy had a very passionate rant about Bethesda forcing this political stuff down his throat and all that. Dr. Disrespect has spoken out against all of this, yada yada yada. So a lot of people are criticizing this game. I thought to myself, with all this criticism, what is it exactly? Is this game like constantly throwing like modern day politics in your face? Like, are you just encountering all these people who like want to be referred to as ja, as ye, and all this, right? No, actually, the game is pretty much apolitical. There's no real modern politics thrust into your face in this game. You do get to choose your pronouns when you create your character. You get to be he, she, or they. He, him, she, her, they, them. That's it. And you can change this during the course of the game if you want to, which does not require you to take testosterone, have any body parts removed, wear a binder, or attend gender theory classes on the moon. That's it. And it's ironic because a lot of other games have sort of done away with gender altogether. Elden Ring, hell, in Cyberpunk 2077, you could anatomically be a trans character. What strikes me as so strange about this huge backlash over such a small thing is that you get to choose your pronouns. As in, if you play a male space adventurer, you can choose he, him, if you want to, and then you can just forget about it. Set it and forget it. You do not have to engage with this anymore. For the next however hundreds many of hours you want to put into the game, you can just forget the whole thing ever happened and sleep well at night in your bed with your pronoun intact. Or maybe if you are someone in the minority of the population who identifies as trans or non-binary or whatever, you can decide that you'd like to play with your pronoun. Or at least if those are available, there's only a few. Or maybe you're not trans, but you would just like to try that. That's what I did in Cyberpunk 2077. I thought, well, why not? It's a role-playing game. We get to choose a role to play. It's weird to me when people only play themselves. I almost always play female characters in role-playing games because it's fun to step out of my own, body a little bit and to play something else. That's the whole point of these games. Now, I've heard, and I've said, this is one thing I've said about this is that, it is a role-playing game. You get to choose outlandish things in these games, right? Whether that's, in some you get to be elves or you get to have preposterous hair colors or whatever. And people are like, well, that's like you made this argument, right? That there has to be verisimilitude in games, right? That there has to be, so for instance, like in a fantasy game, there aren't jet bombers and tanks, right? In a medieval fantasy game. And so that's a sense of realism that you create within the game. And I agree with that. That's important. But I don't think that being able to choose he, she, or he, him, she, her, or they, them actually disrupts the realism present in a game like Starfield, which is a futuristic sci-fi game, any more than like being able to play a black person would. And again, like, I've criticized shows like The Winter King for casting a black Merlin because I think that disrupts the realism that is required to make that into a good show. But in a space sci-fi game, I mean, look at the future's probably going to have people choosing their pronouns. Like, you're going to lose this war. Now, I do think, on the other hand, that this current level of passion, the zeitgeist around trans issues is going to fade and dissipate. We go through these cultural moments. I don't think this will be as prominent in 10 years or maybe 20 years or whatever. Things will shift. I can't predict how. But do I think that this sense that people should be allowed to pick their pronouns is going to go away? No, I don't. Now, I do think that pronouns are interesting because I do think pronouns are sort of are a collective belonging, right? Like, you see somebody, you don't know their name. They say, well, describe this person. You say, well, he was a man. Because that's your perception, and you're using a pronoun to describe what you perceive. And I think that the reason people have gotten very, particular about this is because they're trying to pass as this other gender that they weren't born with. And so then when people use the wrong pronoun, it makes them feel like you're disrespecting their identity, who they are trying to be. I understand why that would be upsetting to people. I also understand why people might get the pronouns wrong, because it's not always very clear or obvious what gender people are. I think my biggest critique of the gender activists, outside of stuff that has to do with kids, which is another story, we won't get to that right now. But my biggest critique is that I feel like we were moving in a direction at one point. We on the progressive side of the equation, us lefty folk, and culture more broadly was moving towards a point where we were looking at things very fluidly, like, for instance, sexuality. There came a point where, like, gay, straight, bi felt a little antiquated because, like, there is a sliding scale, right? Some people very much sit on one or the other sides of that, but a lot of people sort of fall in between, and that's why the sexuality is hard to pin down. Maybe you're very straight, but you're attracted to this one guy, and you don't really understand why. It's because sexuality is fluid, and I think gender is a very similar thing. The idea of non-binary, actually, I make jokes about it sometimes, but I do think that's the key here. The binary, how we think of what genders are, right? The male and female gender, not sexuality, not your organs, not your reproductive stuff, but the concept, the intellectual concept, the abstract concept of gender is also fluid. Like, what's a manly man? What's a feminine man, right? What is this? There's a sliding scale. And my problem with the gender activist movement of today is that I feel like they're taking the bad lessons of the past and applying them to this. So instead of saying, well, we're not going to be boxed in by gender anymore, now people say we have to physically transition people and use chemicals and all this stuff to make them appear to be their gender they're identifying with, because now we have to adopt all these outdated concepts of gender, like boys like to play outside and they're very physical, and they, so tomboys must be boys instead of just girls who fall on a different, spot on the spectrum of gender. Let's say there are infinite genders, so you stop boxing yourself in. It's not just about the outward appearance, obviously, if this is the case, if this is non-binary belief in gender is real or is accurate or whatever. So this concept of, like, having to choose is an imprisoning concept rather than a liberating concept. And that's my big problem with the current gender movement that says you have to choose. You're not the gender you were born with. And it seems to sort of conflate gender and sex to a degree, even though the gender ideologists are saying that those things are distinct and separate. And I think it's much better to go down the path of saying, sexuality and gender and these things are not set in stone. There's not just two genders. There are infinite ones, and you don't have to actually put hormones in your body to become this other gender, because maybe you just fall on a different tick on an infinite spectrum. And you can just be okay with being yourself. without medical intervention. That's what bothers me. Not pronouns, not people wanting to belong or feel more at home with who they are. And if this game allows some people to play it and just feel a little bit better about the choices they're given, great. I don't see the harm in it. And it strikes me as just another one of these YouTube shticks where people on YouTube get super outraged about something. And then people in, games media get outraged back, and everyone gets a big old, they just slap each other and throw a huge fit for clicks. This is what it's for. It's for clicks. And I get it. I do stuff for clicks. I mean, that's how I make my money. But I don't want to sacrifice my reason and compassion for clicks, I guess, and my reason tells me that this is a small issue and that people are making a mountain out of a molehill. And my compassion tells me that why is it, why does it matter so much to everyone how people want to define themselves? We should live and let live. Is that so hard to just live and let live and accept that people are different than us and accept that not everyone is going to agree? And so, to answer the question, is Starfield woke? I will say no, it's not. And the word woke is already dead and antiquated and useless. Is Starfield pushing a social agenda in the mildest possible way, in a way that many other games are also not so much pushing this agenda, but just sort of acquiescing because, what's the alternative? Just to leave people out for no reason? Again, if this was a game that forced you to if you're going to play a male character to you had to pick female pronouns or something, that would be absurd, and I would say so. But just the fact that you can just say I want to be they, them, I don't see the harm in it. I also don't see the harm in people in real life botching pronouns. I've known lots of people who go by they, them, but look very distinctly like girls, and it's hard for me. It's hard for my brain to remember to use they, them sometimes. But that doesn't make me a bad person who's purposely trying to hurt people. It just means that sometimes this is hard to wrap around our brains. And that people who, we've heard stories of people, trying to get people fired or whatever for being misgendered or using the wrong pronouns. And that's not right. Laws that penalize or jail people for messing up on some languaging. I don't believe in language policing. Okay? I don't believe in that. I don't believe in censorship or language policing, but I also don't believe that we should freak out because there's these options that you can choose or not choose in a fucking video game. So, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Thank you for watching. As far as Starfield goes, I think the harshest review I've seen is from Jim Stephanie Sterling, I don't know what to say about Sterling these days, but their review is the harshest I've seen, and they're trans, so go figure. Anyways, thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe, hit the notification bell. Peace.